I welcome to the next video in cryptography. Now we are going to have a look at the illustration on the asymmetric encryption. As I told you on the previous video, asymmetric key encryption addresses confidentiality in one scenario. It also addresses non-repudiation, accountability, and source origin authentication in other scenario. Yeah. For example, if we have three users, Ram, Ahmad, and James, okay, and I create an key pair for Ram, and that is K1, K2, and key pair for Ahmad, which is K3, K4, and key pair for James, which is K5 and K6. Yeah, out of which K1, K3, and K5 are private keys. K2, K4, and K6 are public keys. Yeah, so K1 is accessible, or it can be used only by Ram, and K3 can be used only by Ahmad, and K5 can be used only by James. Okay, and K2 can be used by the owner is Ram, but can be used by Ahmad and James and Ram as well. Yeah, and it doesn't make a sense for Ram to use K2. Okay, but again, for the sake of discussion, we can say, yeah, so K2 can be used by Ahmad, James, and Ram. K4 can be used by all the three, and K6 can also be used by all the three. Because K1 can be accessed only by Ram, and K3 by Ahmad, and K5 by James, who are the owners of the key pair, we call K1, K3, and K5 as private keys, and K2, K4, and K6 the public keys, because everybody else who are authorized can use it. When I say public, it doesn't mean that somebody on the road can actually use it. Any authorized user on the infrastructure can also use the K2, K4, and K6, which are the public keys. Now, let's come on to the scenario one. Scenario one addresses confidentiality. Scenario one addresses confidentiality. Okay. For example, in the month of, let's say, we are in January, mid of January. So January or February, the HR is going to send the increment letter to the employees. Okay, so what the HR will choose is, HR will pick up the public key of the recipient. Okay, for example, if James is the HR and James wants to send the increment letter to Ram, so what James will do is, James will pick up the K2, okay, which is the public key of Ram, and he will encrypt the message and send it to Ram. Okay, if Ahmad is man in the middle, okay, and he actually wants to read the message, he cannot read the message, because in the asymmetric encryption, as we discussed in the previous video, we can use one key out of the key pair for the encryption, but we have to use the other key out of the same key pair for the decryption. If James is picking up K2 for encrypting the email, okay, and send it to Ram, if Ahmad is going to be the man in the middle, he cannot decrypt the message, because whatever is encrypted with K2 can be decrypted only with K1, and Ahmad does not have access to K1. Okay, so for example, encryption or the plain text, in this case it's an email with K2, okay, will give you the ciphertext. Okay, in this particular example, it is the salary slip or increment letter, whatever it is. Okay, so decryption of the ciphertext with K1 will give you what is called the plain text. Okay, now this can be done only by Ram. Okay, this can be done by James. Okay, this addresses confidentiality. Why? Because Ahmad has also got access to K2. Even if Ahmad wants to convey a message to Ram, and Ahmad can also pick up K2 and encrypt the message and send it to Ram, and James cannot read it because it can be decrypted only by K1, for which James does not have access. But one thing that we should consider here is, this addresses confidentiality, because Ahmad and James can pick up K2 and encrypt the email and send it to Ram. It does not establish accountability or source origin authentication or non-repudiation. So, but confidentiality is established. This is scenario one. In scenario two, okay, now it's an internal communication that the James wants to convey to Ram and Ahmed and blah, 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 so many employees within the organization. So what James will actually do is James will draft the email. Okay, let's say it's an holiday, or there's a team meeting, or the entire organization is going to go out for a team building exercise. So James wants to send a message to Ram, Ahmed, and plus so many employees. Let's say there are 98 more employees within the organization. So what James will do is James will pick up K5 and encrypt the email and send it to everyone within the organization. K5 is a private key of James, so whatever is encrypted with K5, the private key can be decrypted only with the corresponding public key, which is K6. Because K6 is a public key, Ram, Ahmed, and remaining 98 employees, okay, in this situation, as an example, can read the email using K6 for decrypting the email. Okay, so otherwise, if K6 is used for decrypting the email, obviously it has been encrypted with K5, and the owner of K5 is James. So it establishes non-repudiation, accountability, and source origin authentication. It does not establish the confidentiality, because if more than two people can actually read a message, okay, there's no confidentiality. This can be classified as an internal message. Okay, so in internal, we need to establish source origin authentication. Now, if everyone in the organization receives an email tomorrow saying tomorrow is a holiday, okay, so first thing that we'll have a look at who has sent the email, right? So we need to establish the source origin. We should also be just trying to discuss, and out of the topic here, we should also be very careful reading the email, which is actually from an unknown source, because of we are in the age of what is called the ransomware. Okay, we had seen, for the ransomware, there are more videos on the attacks, ransomwares, and forensics will follow, not for the CISSP, but for the awareness. So keep subscribing. So be connected. Learn CISSP and other news in cyber security. Okay, coming on to scenario two. So encryption. This is by James, okay, but James is using K5. This is not for Ram. It's for Ram, Ahmed, and other employees. Other employees as well. So we should be using what is called the K6, which is public key of James. Okay. So in the scenario one, it establishes confidentiality. Scenario two, it establishes what is called as a non-repudiation, accountability, and source origin authentication. Okay. Otherwise known as just an authentication. Okay. So asymmetric encryption is more useful because it's scenario based. Okay. Now, I said scenario one establishes confidentiality, and scenario two establishes non-repudiation, accountability, and source origin authentication. How can you address both the scenarios together? That's when we start using the symmetric key and encryption and asymmetric encryption together. Okay, so we'll touch upon the basics of integrity in the next video. Okay, and then we'll discuss about the digital certificates, where we are going to have a complete picture about how the integrity, confidentiality, source origin authentication, non-repudiation, accountability is going to get established with the asymmetric encryption and the hashing algorithms together. Thank you very much for watching this video. Be connected. So learn CISSP and follow me for the further news on cybersecurity across the world, which is soon to hit you. Thank you very much. Cheers and bye-bye.